Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast, Women's College Gymnastics Edition. Today, we are here to talk about the results of the bracket madness of women college gymnastics, and we also have some breaking news at the time of recording. So we have the women's gymnastics expert, Miss Sarah Bogan. How are you doing today, ma'am?
Oh, I'm shocked, honestly. I barely recovered from postseason, and suddenly we have more news. So um, things are crazy in the world of gymnastics, but crazy in really exciting ways, which is fun to see.
So let's start with the breaking news.
Yes. So a team that we haven't talked much about, because they haven't really been having notable performances the past few years,
Mm-hmm.
is the University of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
But the University of Georgia is one of the flagship programs that really kicked off the college gymnastics craze. So when we think of the programs and the coaches that started it out, you can think of Greg Marsden at Utah, really drumming up a fan base. You can think about Sarah Patterson at Alabama, doing the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. Um, Miss Val out at UCLA, doing amazing work. But I think perhaps the most notable is Suzanne Yocklin at University of Georgia. And University of Georgia has won 10 national championships, more than anybody else. And they had some sort of crazy streak going on for a while. I think it was something like 6 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
No team, I think Oklahoma can get to that level, but the thought of any other team replicating what Georgia did early in college gymnastics history is just unheard of. So Suzanne Yocklin retired back in, oh boy, 2009. And ever since then, they've been struggling. 7 years ago, they hired Courtney Kupets-Carter, who was one of their gymnasts, was an Olympic silver medalist, and they continue to not do so hot under her. Halfway through nationals, before the 4 on the floor happened, Georgia finally announced that they were firing Courtney Kupets-Carter. Um, and ever since then, the gym internet has been on tenterhooks, wondering who's going to be replaced. Who's going to take over this storied program that clearly puts a lot of pressure on its head coaches to perform. One notable former head coach of Georgia is a man by the name of Jay Clark, who that name is recognizable as the coach of LSU's team that just won the national championship. So he was
Spoilers
the
for anyone who didn't
oh
know that LSU won
yeah,
the national championship.
yes, exactly. So sorry about that. Hopefully nobody here read the headline of this of this podcast. Um, but Jay Clark actually, he was the head coach at Georgia for 3 years after Suzanne Yocklin retired. He worked under her. He was her assistant coach, and Georgia fired him after only 3 years. He was one of the front runners who was being considered for this position, but he did not take the job. He and all of his staff are going to be staying at LSU, which is exciting to see. But it, of course, raises the question of who's going to want to take over this program. So right before we started recording, it was announced that there's going to be a team of two co-head coaches at Georgia. One of them is Ryan Roberts, who was the Georgia assistant coach, and none other than Cecile Landy, who is one of the coaches of Simone Biles, which is crazy. I think Cecile is a great choice. I think she'll do a really good job. I think Georgia in the future is going to be a force to be reckoned with based on just the name recognition of Cecile as a good coach, bringing in recruits alone. I think recruiting has been a struggle for Georgia in recent years. They're just not getting the top gymnasts. They will get top gymnasts with Cecile at the helm. So yeah, it's crazy. It's cool to see one of the top elite coaches in the country moving over to college. That's cool to see. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this pans out. I just wasn't something anyone was really expecting. So, but I think the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. Georgia wants to be as good as they once were in gymnastics. Um, and making a monumental hire, a top tier hire like this is what they needed in order to have a prayer of getting back to their former glory. So, yeah. What are your thoughts?
So just reading into it a little bit quickly. So like Georgia had the streak of two, four. They had five national titles in a row from '05, '06, '07, '08, '09. Like you said, they have the most ever at this point in time. But then ever since that '09 thing, that's
Mm-hmm.
literally a decade, or was that, yeah, decade, and they haven't been of relevance. So how do you be of relevance in 2024? You pony up, I don't know how much, you pony up the Brinks trucks and you go get the two coaches you named, and one of them being a coach of the greatest gymnast of all time. Like that's how you make a splash. I mean, that's how you do it in the off season, is just coaching higher 101. Like now you got the shiny new toy as the two coaches, and it's like, all right, you did it right. Well, today's the 25th. So a week after the championships concluded. So now you can go full on recruitment mode and be like, hey, we're here now. So now you might have some high school freshmen, maybe some people in the transfer portal thinking like, oh, this person was coaching some Bios. Maybe if I go here, I can be like her. So it's a great
Yeah,
hire.
and not even just, girls in the transfer portal coming up through high school. Like Simone Biles' gym, World Championship Center, or
Mhm.
World Champion Center, excuse me, it's already a hot spot. People are relocating from all over the country to go train at WCC.
Mhm.
And there's a massive group of elite gymnasts who are approaching college age. So I'm not even just thinking of like people who are being enticed by Simone's coach. I'm thinking of like people who train with Simone currently and are currently being coached by Cecile and may want to continue being coached by
Yeah.
Cecile. There's a really, really clear built-in pipeline from World Championship Center to Georgia now, if those gymnasts choose to take it. And that alone is super powerful. I mean, I just want to throw out a couple names. Um, Amari Drayton is a freshman at LSU. She is a world champion center gymnast. And there are going to be plenty more starting in the next couple of years. Jordan Childs, we know of at UCLA and of the Olympic team, world champion center gymnast. And there are more in the pipeline. We're going to see Zoe Miller. We're going to see Tiana Simona Sacra, Jocelyn Robertson. A lot of those younger gymnasts are coming up and are going to be prime college age very soon. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. So in anything with a new hire, like obviously the shift there, now the attention's on you, but you'll it's just a wait and see. Like at this level, obviously you said like they were coaching elite, now coming to college, but now you're gonna have the pressures of a campus expecting stuff because your standard's the standard. Like
Mm-hmm.
and Georgia's standard, I mean, even if it's been a decade plus, it's like, hey, we won five natties in a row. We got the most ever. Like once you have that level of success, your standard's always going to be we need to get back there. We need to get back into the brackets. We need to get back to the final four. We need to be competing. So I don't know with a big hire like this with these two and the money that they're probably going to be paying. I mean, their expectation is like, hey, we at least got to compete to at least get to the final four next year. I don't care how we do it. Like I don't know what their timetable is going to be, but within the first 3 years of them coaching, they got to get to at least one final four.
Yeah, and I think that might be a little bit unreasonable,
But the standard's the standard.
but the standards and standards. I mean, I mean, I would certainly hope. Well, so Georgia has definitely shown that they are willing to fire people who aren't meeting that standard. That's
Mhm.
why we didn't get to see Jay Clark stay. We didn't get to see Dana Durante as another name. I was sitting there, I was doing a lot of thinking this week. I was wondering who would want to take this job because their standards are so high, the expectations are so high, and they're starting from a really tough spot, frankly. I mean, they have one of the top recruits in the nation, Lily Smith, who was their national qualifier this year as a freshman. She is absolutely beautiful and wonderful gymnast, but beyond that, they really haven't been getting a ton of great gymnasts coming in. And you can't get to a Final Four if you don't have good gymnasts. So that's why I'm hoping that we'll get to see a couple of years of growth, and that the Georgia program will allow them a couple of years of growth before they start firing people again. But honestly, with Cecile, Cecile's coming from outside of the college gym world. She is a very successful elite coach. And for her, if she gets fired from this position, she'll be just fine going and opening a gym somewhere else and coaching elites again. Like, I think I see the appeal and why this would be a risk worth taking and a safer risk, than for people who are just coming up through the college ranks and don't have experience in the elite scene or the club scene, really.
Yeah. I mean, if you're being a reasonable human, yeah, it should take. But again, they ain't hiring you to. They're not spending this money for you to take years and years to build. They want that now. Like they want you competing now, especially when you look around the country, heck, your own conference, looking
Right.
around and seeing like when you got the resources like the University of Georgia has, when you got the pool these two coaches have, they're gonna
And
be
when
talked about.
you,
They're gonna want a title in like 5 years. They're gonna
and I'm,
want one.
and I'm also wondering about the pressure that the idea of Oklahoma joining the SEC is putting on the
Hmm.
teams that are currently in the SEC, because the SEC is already competitive, but bringing in OU, like if you want a prayer at an SEC championship, you need to be pulling out all the stops if OU is going to be in the mix. So
Yeah.
I think
But
the schools are scared.
speaking of that, last time
Yeah.
we talked, I was big on human error. I was big on
Yes.
human error, and I was big on and I was like, if there's gonna be one team, two teams to win, it was gonna be that wasn't Oklahoma. It was gonna be LSU or Florida because they hate Oklahoma. You can tell they hate them. They hate them so much. They both have lost to them in this decade in national title games, coming in second place. Both of them have, and they were sick of them. And
Mm-hmm.
if you, I don't know what the gym internet, whatever you call it,
Jim Turnett.
gym internet has said, but I really hope you went in there and it's like, there's my little partner on my little podcast said that human error should be the name of this bracket this year because it happened in spades, and I was just sitting back like it was crazy. But
Yeah, I was waiting for the "told you so" text
no,
to
no,
start
I was just
rolling
caught.
in.
I was just calm. I was just like human error, like it's gonna happen. And then one of the teams that I said was gonna, like, if it wasn't Oklahoma, they did it. And LSU, I mean, you just talked about Jay Clark. I mean, they've been at this door. They've been banging at this door for this whole decade. Finally broke through, and I think it's so crazy because obviously the most famous to the casual world is Olivia Dunn, who is on
Yes.
LSU. And she said a month ago she wants to help bring a national championship to LSU. And she put her money where her mouth is. She did well. I mean, it's kind of funny if you look at the whole year, like once they had that battle with like Florida, that like on the last second buzzer, I was just like, one of these two teams, these are going to be if anyone's going to beat Oklahoma, if anyone's going to win besides Oklahoma, it's these two. And it's crazy. It is LSU Gen X Tigers, man.
Yeah, they won in, it was a nail biter. Like they won, they deserved
Hmm.
the win, but it was tense between those four teams at the end.
Oh yeah.
You know, they were not flawless. LSU
Nope.
was not flawless. No team was flawless. Um, but the last beam rotation, the LSU Tigers were, they were leading. I believe they were leading all the way through. But their second gymnast, sixth year senior, Savannah Schoenhair, went up and just, kind of was fell on nothing, basically,
Mhm.
lost her balance on a dance element when she was down on the beam and did like a koala sloth roll. And instantly the rest of the gymnasts on that team had all of the pressure on them because you can drop one bad score, you can drop one low score.
Mhm.
And just the way Connor McLean stepped up after that as a freshman and handled that pressure. Um, and the way Aaliyah Finnegan, oh my goodness, watching Aaliyah Finnegan's beam routine to clinch the title is going to be something that we remember for a really long time because it was a moment where like they had to step up and they had to be incredible at the very end in order to earn their title. And they did it. And that's what you want to see happen in sports. You want to see people put it all on the line and win in a really
Oh yeah, it makes it so much more
impressive
exciting.
way.
Yep.
And having that mistake early in the lineup from Sav, I think helped pull that performance out of the rest of the team. And I'm so grateful we got to watch it.
Talk about when you talk about pressure situation, like the young woman who is all over when you go on the ends like the national championship and all that. Haley Bryant.
Oh, Haley Bryant, yes.
She put on a show.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So I mean, you have her who's now people didn't know who she was. Now they know who she was. Like you have a team winning their first national championship ever. You have the team who has one of the most recognizable college athletes on the planet right now. Like I don't know how the only way you script it any better is if they were the ones to take out Oklahoma in the championship, but it just
Yeah,
didn't
and
work
I
out
think
like that.
I have a suspicion that I mean I can't speak for the teams, of course, but I can speak for the fans that I interact with on the gym internet. And I think LSU is really excited to have won, but I think the way that people imagined the upset happening was in the final. Like they wanted to see a situation where Oklahoma was having a good day and one of these other teams edged them out. Like I don't think when I dreamed of seeing Cal win or when I dreamed of seeing LSU win, I'm still happy for LSU, but like what I had in mind was them outscoring Oklahoma on an Oklahoma average day. And we didn't get to see that, which is kind of a bummer. Um, because Oklahoma really had a stunningly sad meltdown. Like there's human error, but there's also human error on the level that we saw and the, kind of just snowball effect of what we saw happen to Oklahoma in semifinals. And I never believed that Oklahoma was untouchable. Like I believe they were capable of errors. I never expected them to fully unravel in the way that they did in that semifinal.
I mean, because it makes sense. Because in the preview we talked about if everything is equal, if everyone's normal, no one would beat Oklahoma. It's gonna take someone to either be super, super extraordinary and not make mistakes, and it's gonna take Oklahoma to have a collapse. And the collapse happened. But then, like with Oklahoma too, with like any team, the pressure was on them to win, like
Mm-hmm.
because that again that goes into the era because everyone's expecting you to win, so you're in your own head already because you're the two-time champions back to back. Everyone's expecting you to win it again. You're going for the three-peat. No one's come close to the three-peat except you guys in 2016, 2017, and then it didn't happen. And then no
Mm-hmm.
one has done the three-peat officially since the Georgia team that we talked about earlier. So then you're chasing that history, you're getting a little tight, like and then it all collapsed.
Right. And something that KJ Kindler, who's just we've talked about, is just an incredible coach and has been incredibly successful for reasons. Um, Something she said, kind of in a post meet interview, is she talked about how they've been undefeated for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're so head and shoulders above everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I watched a meet where they about half the team had strep throat, competed anyway, had a couple of falls, still broke their own record for top scorer. So like even with adversity, they still weren't pressure tested during the season. And so KJ said, like, yeah, we've been living in the lap of luxury and we haven't had the opportunity to overcome adversity to the same extent that some of the other teams have. So when Faith Torres got up there, did the first vault, the first routine of the semifinal, and sat it down and fell. And then the next gymnast went up and had a big squat, had a big fall, and that happened twice more. The team didn't quite know what to do in terms of fighting back from that. And for a while, it looked like they could. They had just a stunning bars rotation, but then they went to beam and had two falls there, and that was the nail in the coffin. And we did see flashes of greatness from Oklahoma, but just that team performance of them collectively falling apart on two events was tough to watch. And you could see in their eyes, they didn't know how to handle it because that was such an unfamiliar position for them. So I guess my question for you, since I know you watch a lot of different sports, is like, when you're the best of the best, how do you train to handle adversity? Like, because you don't want to go out and like create it, like, you don't want to, in gymnastics, a couple other analysts have said, like, you don't want to train, you don't want to like go up and have someone fall so that you can practice doing better. So like, how do you create pressure for yourself when you're not getting it from your
Of
competitors?
your competitors. Yeah, because like you just said, like they haven't been like tested because going back to what I said earlier, that's why I was so high on LSU or Florida being the ones to do it because that's as pressure gets. Like you need this score to win this meet or you go or you lose. Like Oklahoma was never in that situation just from that standpoint. But
Mm-hmm.
I guess with KJ, I mean, I don't know what advice I could give her since she has one, two, three, four, five, six titles, national
Mm-hmm.
titles. But I think it's one of those things like when you're in practice, like trying to do like simulations, like not no one getting hurt or whatever, just like I don't know, putting like the bar like literally like where you can drop and your toes touch the thing and like pretend to like just fall on your back. All right, this person fell and how are we gonna do this like simulation type stuff? Like, all right, we have this score. Like, what are we gonna do? Because they were going against themselves. Like the 2 years of being undefeated, you get to a point where you do sometimes get lackadaisical against your opponents because you're just like, it doesn't matter. We're Oklahoma. Like we just got a record when we had strep throat. Half the team, like, who's gonna beat us? And then when you realize that because I do feel like as a casual, man, I do feel like a lot of talent is dispersed across the country in LS and gymnastics. So it's like these teams got talented women too. You're not just the only talented team, and it's like I think this will help them going forward because it's like, do you got? It's kind of crazy that we're saying the round they lost in is an embarrassment, but for them it's like, do you want this embarrassment ever again? Like, do
Mm.
you want to be the laughing stock of the gymnastics world because everyone was hyping us up 2 years in a row, undefeated, we're gonna three-peat, and then we don't even make it to the final four? Like, I feel like that is going to, for any girls coming in, they're gonna know it's not a game. For the girls returning, they are going to be vengeful next
I
year.
think
Like,
so.
just like
I
you
think
talked about
so.
them going to the SEC, every meet, I think they're going to try and send a message to everyone because everyone's going to be like, all right, Oklahoma, it's time to write them off. They're not
Mm.
invincible. KJ's not it anymore. Like,
Well, yeah, the last time they lost nationals, no, two times ago that they lost nationals when
mhm.
UCLA beat them in 2018.
Yep.
It was a nail biter. And a lot of fans, a lot of gymnastics fans recommend watching the 2018 final to new gymnastics fans because it's commonly accepted as being like one of the most exciting finals
Mhm.
ever. Um, but Oklahoma was killing it. They did amazing. And then UCLA swooped in, and the last gymnast to go up, Peng Peng Lee, got a 10 and clinched it for the UCLA Bruins. And it was so close. I forget what the margin of error was. It was like 0.0175 or like 0.175. It was a tiny, like even for gymnastics, a
Yeah,
tiny, tiny error.
it looks like the
And
total points for UCLA was 198.0750, and then Oklahoma in second place, 198.0375.
wow. So small, small. I'm no mathematician, really.
You literally are.
But it's small. So like that decimal point, whatever it was, like 0.0475 or whatever it was,
Mhm.
we heard stories the next season of the Oklahoma gymnasts would show up to practice and they would scream that number at each other in practice throughout the
Oof,
entire
that's great.
season. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what Oklahoma does with this type of defeat, because like we've seen them like get edged out and how they've responded. We've seen them be doubted and use that as fuel to bounce back. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the adversity when like the adversity and the thing that was stopping them and the thing that got in their way was themselves. So I'm very curious to see what things look like for them next season and how they go about bouncing back from this and how KJ Kindler leads them back from this. Because I think it'll be very interesting to see and very instructive for everyone to see. So,
Yeah. The only thing too with like when you have a dynasty like that and the fans, because I did see because the algorithm showing me some stuff when I was paying attention to the finals where some Oklahoma fans were like, Oklahoma would have dog walked all four of these teams. And I'm just like, well, you guys
but
aren't
they
there, so
didn't.
you can't say that. You're at home. So I know you're not used to being at home this early. Well, you gotta eat it. You gotta eat it. Like,
Yeah, I've seen a lot of like people putting like just saying like LSU, this is an asterisk win.
oh,
They only
absolutely
won
not.
because
No, no. Then don't get eliminated. See, don't get eliminated. Don't. That's your fault. You effed up. You made the mistakes. The other teams capitalized. No, there's no asterisk. None of that garbage. You were there in your little thing with Alabama, yourselves, Utah, and Florida, and you lost. Point
mhm.
blank, period, end of story. So you just got to eat it. I will say, too, with LSU winning and California coming in second. Another time, another sport where since the Pac-12 is dissolving, the Pac-12 goes out in a bang
Oh,
and is
they
right
really
there trying to
did.
win a championship
They really
again.
did.
And it just didn't. And then even your squad of Utah, I mean, they're right there too. Like it was,
Utah impressed me so much. And I tweeted about this because they amazed me. They finished on vault and they had a really rough. I almost thought like they were just. It almost looked like the Oklahoma vault rotation from the
mhm.
round before because it was just like there were a couple squats, there were a couple. I think there was a fall. It was just they fell apart on vault when they needed to be amazing, but their beam and floor and bars were just stunning. And especially on floor, we've talked before about like what kind of performance it would take to beat Oklahoma when Oklahoma is at their best, or like having a normal day, even just a normal day for Oklahoma. What it is going to take is like everybody embracing the same energy and magically hitting everything. And I've seen it happen a couple times. Oklahoma or Utah, I was getting that vibe from on beam and especially floor. I think they're a team that has been through a lot this year. They're short staffed. They had their head coach let go right before the season started. Their assistant coach Carly Dockendorf stepped up into the head coach role. They're down a coach for the whole season, and they did so well. They exceeded expectations with a really young team, and with a first year head coach. And coming off of kind of some really tumultuous internal team culture dynamic things. Um, I was so impressed by Utah, um, and so proud of them.
So,
And it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years.
so I had to pull this up. I don't know if you have yours handy, but in terms of bracket fill out, when we filled out these brackets last time,
Yeah, my
I
bracket
personally,
is it's not working.
I mean, I was just looking at the final four. I got three of the final four right. I just didn't get Oklahoma right. I had Cal, LSU, and Florida. I just
Yeah,
didn't
and
have
then I
I didn't have
had
Oklahoma.
yeah, oh right, and then I had Oklahoma, Florida, LSU, and Kentucky. Which, speaking of heartbreaks, Kentucky, holy cow,
Yeah.
they were taken out. I think Kentucky had a pacing problem throughout the season. They were too good too early on, and they burnt out at the end a little bit. But yeah, my brain bracket, I have a brain bracket and a heart bracket. And my heart bracket actually did better than my brain bracket this year, which tells you something. But yeah,
So
I had Oklahoma, Cal,
mhm.
and Utah. Those were my three that were correct in my heart bracket final four.
Yeah, I just could never. I just yeah, Florida knows you. I was just like, yeah, they're getting there somehow. Then Cal is like Pac-12's going out big. Then the Sooner. What do you think was obviously Oklahoma is the craziest upset maybe ever,
Mm-hmm.
yada yada, but exclude them.
Yes.
Do you like you just talked about Kentucky? Do you think that was a bigger one, or I
Oh,
Michigan not getting out of the first, like the first, like which do you think was the bigger upset?
well, I'm going to vote for neither,
Okay,
because I think the biggest upset was Stanford.
Pac-12 team.
Stanford had a stunning performance in the postseason. So they started unranked. So they were down in the Cal regional.
Hmm.
They started out in the Cal, Auburn, Stanford, and Southern Utah group. Stanford, I forget what their ranking was prior to postseason, but it was not high enough to be, among the ranked teams. So they went in unranked, were placed geographically. They started by upsetting Auburn, moved on to the regional final, then went on to upset Denver with a perfect 10 right at the end. Um, they outscored Denver and they made it to national semifinals alongside Cal. That was incredible to watch. Going from number whatever they were and peaking at exactly the right time and putting multiple really, really strong performances together in a row to be able to earn their nationals berth.
Hmm.
The last year of the Pac 12, that was stunning and awesome and so cool to watch. If you look at the final standings, because the final standings for the top four and then the elite eight and such are based on nationals performances. So if you look at the standings, you will see that Stanford ended the season ranked ahead of Oklahoma.
Man, if you would have said that at the beginning of the season, if someone in Vegas is like, I'm going to bet my life savings by the end of this year, Stanford's going to be ranked ahead of Oklahoma in women's college gymnastics, you would have to do a home health call and put that person in a psych ward. But now they'd be freaking rich.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the biggest shock for me is like just how well Stanford did. And I think it kind of speaks to kind of this interesting question of like strategically, how do you pace your team? Because that's what I think was holding back LSU for a long time is because they kept doing too well too early in the season. And then we didn't have any gas left in the tank at the end of the season. And I
Hmm.
think the same thing happened to Kentucky this year. Then you look at a team like Florida that started pretty low and then like every single week they got better and better and better and ended up finishing fourth overall. Stanford is another example of that. Like they figured out how to conserve their energy and come out at the end of the season and compete really, really well when it really, really counts for the standings. So I think a lot of coaches are kind of going to be looking at what Tabitha Yim has been doing and, what the strategies of, these coaches at Stanford and Florida and these teams that have really managed to make these upsets in the season, what they're doing.
It's great. I think with the Michigan thing too, because obviously like they were national champs in
Oh,
2021, and
Michigan.
then like you don't make it far at all. Like you got bounced before you could even say you were here. Like that's embarrassing on their.
Yeah, it's rough. And they have had, we talked a little bit about this on the preview show. Like they have depth issues. They have so many injuries. And I think that's the biggest issue. Is just they didn't have the depth. They had to rely on certain gymnasts too much, and they burnt out too soon.
But more importantly, congratulations, LSU first
Yes,
first national title. Now I don't know if you've already seen this. They already have the not too early top six for
really.
2025.
I think is that the one where the tweet was just a bunch of question marks for the top three.
This is from Brandis Hefner from right on the NCAA website.
Oh, really?
The early. So here are the top six teams. Priest,
Okay.
who they think 2025 way too early because every sport does this as soon as someone wins a title. Predictions are made assuming COVID fifth year options were not being used by fourth year seniors unless declared prior to publishing this article.
Okay then.
They got preseason number one, Florida. Then number
Okay.
two, Oklahoma. Three, Cal. Four, LSU. Five, Utah. And six, Michigan State.
Wow.
Way too early.
Okay.
Way too
That
early.
is way too early. It's very interesting.
And then they have top sixes for everything. Preseason top six all around. Bowers, Jordan from Oklahoma.
Makes sense.
Harris from UCLA.
Oh, love her.
Frazier from Cal. Wong from Florida. Maya from California. And Anna Pilgrim from Florida. That's the
Anya is
preseason
so good.
tops. Wow, they got everything. Then vault, they got Selena Harris of UCLA number one, Maya from Cal, Mackenzie from Kentucky, Sage Kellerman from Michigan State, Hannah from Oklahoma, Nikki Smith from Michigan State.
Hmm.
And then bars, Jordan Bowers, Lily Smith from Georgia, Wong, Madeline from Cal, Kayla from Florida, Isabella from Townsend.
Ooh,
And then
very interesting.
Beam, Connor McLean, LSU, Faith Torres, Oklahoma, Maya Cal, Selena, UCLA, Grace, Utah, on Fraser, California. And then Floor, your girl Jake Carey, Oregon State. Finnegan, LSU, Fraser, Cal, Jocelyn Moore, Missouri, Celeste Bras, Kentucky, KJ Johnson, LSU. That is the preseason's already top six in all the categories. And this article was literally published April 24th, 2024.
Oh boy. Well, we will see.
Yep,
We will
that's
see
all
what
you can
happens.
say when these things come out. We'll see. We'll see. But I thoroughly enjoyed seeing a new champ. I thoroughly like seeing some shootouts and all that. I don't know. Like last year, I was more just me personally as a casual fan. Last year I was more into watching the chase for the perfect tens, like with
Hmm.
Trinity and
Oh
seeing
yeah.
Oklahoma repeat. The year before that was obviously when we started, it was perfect for me because that's where SUNY was Willed Arburn all the way there. So
All the
that
way
was
to the
cool.
final four.
Yep,
Yeah.
to the final four. So and then third, we're already like, wow, we've already done three gymnastics years. That's kind of crazy. But then now we see the first time champ in Oklahoma. I think so. What's gonna happen next year? We do not know.
We do not know. And it's always extra interesting the year after the Olympics. So we'll
So
have that to look forward to.
yeah, so we got the Olympics now. So now you get your little break and do what you need to do, and then come back and talk about Paris.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. What do you think? What do you think we should do? Should we switch to, do we still want to keep it kind of college gymnast centric, or do we want to go US centric, or all the countries? Or
Oh, cheers.
what do you think? What do you think that the listeners would be most interested in?
Obviously, I mean, even though we have listeners across the planet, they probably would want to know who made the USA team,
I
who's
think that's gonna be
who's
crazy.
good on the USA team, and who's gonna stop the USA team from winning gold. Like, I think those
Hmm.
would be. So we will have to do some little like, all right, which country could take the USA out that's not China?
Yeah. Well, and it can't be Russia either.
No.
Russia was kind of the big rival for us for years,
Mhm.
but they're not in the picture at this point. So
Yeah.
we shall see.
Especially the
Um,
roster. When the roster's official, like I feel like that's going to be a big
for
thing.
sure, for sure. It depend a lot on. It'll be interesting to see who's healthy. Like I think Great Britain was looking really good, but they have a lot of injuries right now. And the US could be any number of gymnasts, but it's going to come down to who's healthy and who isn't hurt. Um, I can't remember if I've told you this, but something that our listeners can look forward to is the fact that I am actually planning to be at Olympic trials in person.
Whoa.
Yeah, so my best friend from high school, Abby, actually lives in Minneapolis and bought us tickets right when they came out. Um, and she's like, Sarah, you're going to come and we're going to watch the best gymnasts in the world. So I'm looking forward to being up in the still super expensive nosebleed seats, but I will be in the room when it happens, when the Olympic team is named. And I'm looking forward to kind of bringing that experience to the listeners. So that's one thing that we can look forward to this summer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anything else?
No, that's all. Things are crazy in the gymnastics world, but honestly, I was expecting this postseason to be really boring because I was like, nobody's going to beat Oklahoma, but it ended up being such an exciting postseason tournament. And I'm just really grateful to the gymnasts as always, and the coaches and everybody who puts in the work every day for us as fans to be able to watch them do what they do.
Well, that being said, that's the end of the 2023-24 season with Gen X Go Tigers, LSU winning that
Yeah.
national title. Olivia Dunn said it on ESPN 1 month ago. That's the only thing left in her career, and they got it, and they're celebrating still. And that school is doing really well for themselves. So congratulations to LSU winning their first national title. We'll be back, talk about some Olympics going to happen this summer. And with that being said, L7C Podcast signing out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C Podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.